It is February, and that means it's time to get some fig pruning done. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you on a beautiful, crisp, clear morning in February of 2022. If you guys have been following us along, you know that we have over 170 fruit trees in the ground on this newly establishing farm, and today we're going to be pruning our fig trees. Every tree you see today is 2 years old or younger. In fact, we have, I believe, 3 trees that are right at a year old. Everything else here is just at 2 years old. We've got a lot we want to share with you today, so let's go ahead and get started on the tools we're going to need to get this accomplished. First up would be safety, hand protection. Don't want to get your hands cut. Next thing is your eyes. Doesn't get much more important than that. So these 2 things for safety. As far as cutting, I have my go-to Corona pruners. These are bypass pruners. You guys know how that works. Next up for larger branches would be a pair of loppers. You'll see these are bypass loppers as well. Next up would be a saw for larger branches. This one is a folding saw from, you guessed it, Corona. And if things get a little out of hand, I've got this. The first tree we're working on here is our Panache Fig. This has been in the ground for 2 years. One thing I should say, you're gonna see several different options here as far as how you can prune your trees, but this tree in particular is known for growing very vertical. And you can see we made cuts last year that were trying to spread the tree, and then it grew right back in on itself. While standard pruning techniques as far as removing dead and dying branches, removing any branching that is too low or pointing towards the ground, and any branches that are crossing will always apply. In this tree, because I know that I have to encourage outward growth, and I want to keep all of my fruiting wood down so it's easier to harvest, I know that I'm going to be focusing on getting those outward facing branches. One of the things we try to do on a lot of our fig trees in particular is have an open center. It allows for a lot of growth inside and a lot of fruiting, and again, that vertical aspect of this tree. These 2 branches are kind of heading the same direction as some of my other scaffold branches, so I'm going to remove these, keeping all of our cuttings today because we will be rooting these out. That's gonna take forever. That'll work. All right, super simple. I've got a nice open center here. I don't have any crossing branches, nothing pointing towards the ground. I have solid scaffolding here, and again, that outward growth, which is sorely needed for this particular tree. All right, on to the next tree. Next tree up is our Peter's Honey Fig. This tree has been in the ground for 2 years as well. Now, one thing I should mention is our fig trees, in particular these first several varieties, grow very aggressively, and because of that, we can be very aggressive with our pruning. In fact, this is a perfect example. Last year, when we pruned this tree, we had a few folks comment and say we just killed that fig tree. The reason being is we had cut it back to where you see the painted trunks. I can see my cut last year. There was a single stump here, this tall, and then we cut it back to here last year for this second basic trunk, and all it was just the 2 trunks. There was no other branching, and then this year you can see what happened. Now, last year we kept it with 2 trunks, not because we want that, we'd prefer a single trunk. It's easier for us if we do want to use tree tanglefoot to keep ants from getting into the fruit to have a single trunk. So my goal was a kind of a 2-year plan to get to a single trunk, and that's what we're going to be doing this year. Now, I do have 1 branch here that's down below the soil level, so we move the wood chips back. I'll be removing that. And even though I have multiple crossing branches here, I need to make a decision on my trunk as far as which one I want to keep. One is gonna go away. So this one is a little taller. This tree does have a tendency, as you can see, to grow very aggressive, and it does grow pretty vertical, at least from time to time. So I wanna make sure I'm taking that into account. I have very good branching on this particular trunk right here. So I have options for pretty even scaffolding on that trunk as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this big one off. Now, I would use the saw, but I don't think so. That probably hurt a few hearts out there. That's quite a bit of material off of here, and I have a lot of evenly spaced branches here. It actually looks pretty good the way it is. However, I talked a little bit about this tree wanting to grow vertical, so I know that I'm gonna be bringing this tree further down, just not this year. However, there's one more cut I'm gonna make. I have some pretty significant damage on this branch right here, so this one's gonna have to go. This is a tree that's been in the ground for a year. Now you can see all the tremendous growth. This is a tree we got from RSI growers in Glendale, Arizona. It's an unknown variety of white fig. It's a green fig, and they're amazing. So not knowing the variety, the only thing I really know is that this tree grows very aggressive. You guys know we want to go with a single trunk. I should point out here, and I'll mention it again, you can keep this as a multi-trunk if you wanted to. It'll continue to sprout here from the ground, but I'm gonna be taking all of the lower branching off of this tree. We're establishing the tree structure this year because it's only been in the ground for a year. So what I need to do is a whole lot of cutting here right next to the ground. So you get an idea of what that's gonna look like. Now, one other thing with this tree, again, because it's growing nice and aggressive, and we like an open center on our fig trees. Again, just makes for easy ripening of the fruit, easy to reach. You can see we actually staked this center branch. So now what I'm gonna do is actually just kind of disconnect this. Hopefully it's gonna stay up on its own. And then I need to make one more nice aggressive cut. This is what this tree is gonna look like, well, at least for this year. So yeah, definitely aggressive, but when they grow like this, it's what you need to do. This is our Violet de Bordeaux fig. By the way, a fantastic fig variety. We got a lot of figs off of this tree this year. This has been in the ground for a year. We actually started it as a cutting. In fact, just about every one you're seeing today was our cuttings. This last year was 2 branches that were here and here. This is what it turned into in one growing season. While a Violet de Bordeaux fig is known for its slower growth, here we seem to be doing pretty good. We had talked a little bit about that Peter's honey fig that had the dual trunks that we left last year because we wanted to decide on whether or not we had a good solid single trunk. Now, because in our experience, these Violet de Bordeaux figs are a closed eye, we probably don't have as many issues with ants, so we could go with multiple trunks. However, we want the option of a single trunk. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm gonna go ahead and get back down to just a couple of trunks because we have a nice vertical branch right here that would make for a very, very good single trunked fig tree. All right, so I think I'm gonna call an audible on this. I like this branch right here. It's a little lower than the others, but it gives me some solid growth to the north. So if we decide to keep multiple trunks at this point and keep some of these as scaffolding, I have the option of a perfectly faced north scaffold. So I should take this opportunity to mention before we start making some additional cuts, your fruiting on your fig trees is predominantly on growth that occurs from wood that is at least a year old. So anywhere where I have branching that's left, any branching that occurs from there is where I'm gonna get my fruit set, at least for your primary crops. Your Breba crops, so your Breba varieties, the fruiting will occur on wood that's a year old. However, because what we're doing here this year is establishing the tree structure, I do wanna make sure this is breaking nice and low where I've got all of that wonderful fruit. Couple quick notes on those cuts. First one, you can see I'm cutting at an angle. That's important, especially if you're in climates that have a lot more moisture than we do here. You wanna make sure that you don't have the ability for water to pool up on the cut. Again, if you're not dry like we are, it could take some time before this dries up and heals over. You don't wanna have water pooling in there, potentially getting fungus or bacteria into the tree itself. Second thing is, I made this cut about 1 inch above an outward facing node. I have the center of the tree here. If we maintain these multiple trunks, I wanna make sure I have the tree encouraging growth out so it continues to get nice and wide. That gives us a lot more space for fruiting that we can of course reach. All right, Violet de Bordeaux is done. Let's go take a look at a tree that's just a little bit different. This is our Olympia Fig. It's been in the ground for 1 year, came in a very, very small pot. Now what is pretty obvious in this is number one, it's not growing as aggressively as the rest of our trees. However, I am doing my first year's pruning. So I need to make sure we're starting to establish some structure. This tree quite clearly is growing out without any issues. So I think now I need to concentrate on whether or not I can get this tree to grow a little more vertical. Because I can't be super aggressive, I can't take off a lot of material this year, but I see this one branch that's actually going vertical, and normally I would open up the center and remove this, but I'm going to leave it because this may eventually be our trunk if we can get it to go that way. So what I'm going to concentrate on right now, I have a lot of branches going down literally into the ground. I need to make sure I'm removing those. I need to remove any of these branches that are crossing. I have a crossing branch here. I've got crossing branches in throughout. So I'm going to concentrate on removing all of those and trying to get down to just a handful of scaffolding trunks and this guy right here. Okay, so I've taken a lot of material off this tree because it's already still pretty low to the ground. I'm not gonna bother with trying to bring the height down. That's not really an issue. Only other cut that I really think I need to make, I have this branch here that's pointing towards this one. Because they're growing in the same direction, I wanna make sure they're not gonna turn into crossing branches. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this one off. All right, so that's an example of me not being too aggressive with cutting. All right, this one's done. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next tree. This is our Blackjack Fig. This tree has been in the ground for 2 years. The fruit is very similar to a brown turkey fig. I would say it's just a dwarf version of a brown turkey. Now you can see the growth habit is very, very wide. So wide's not an issue. We do want to have some height because we don't want to be on the ground. And I've got a lot of branching that we actually had to dig out to get to, just so we knew kind of what we were dealing with as far as some of the sucker growth. Now, fig trees don't actually get sucker growth. Technically, that is growth from a rootstock. These are rooted cuttings. So all of that material down there will still produce blackjack figs, but I do want to make sure that I get that removed. It's just way too close to the ground and I don't want the fruit on the ground. Now with a tree that's got this much going on, the easiest thing to do, start at the bottom, get all of that sucker growth removed so you get a better idea of what the tree looks like. So I'm going to start with that. Next thing's gonna be taking all of the branching that's here, pointing into the center of the tree. This is gonna all grow in over the growing season, so I don't need that there right now. Okay, I also have some branching that's pointing almost straight down. That's gotta come off. All right, you can see this branch here, I'm gonna keep this one at least for this year, but it's way too low to the ground. So what I'm gonna do is take it off right here at this upward facing branch so it can continue to grow out, but also grow up. Okay, I think I've taken enough off of this tree. I've got some nice balance here in my leftover scaffolds. It's nice and wide, but I'm also getting some good vertical growth. Plenty of branching in here to give me those new shoots and more importantly, some fruit this year. So this tree is our Kudota Fig. It's been in the ground for 2 years. This thing just grows like crazy everywhere. It also has a fairly low break in the trunk. So I think what we're gonna do is go ahead and let the tree stay nice and low, let it do its aggressive growing like it likes to, and basically remove some of this center branching and ensure that I've got some nice strong scaffolding on this tree. I have a couple of branches coming out of the ground. I'm gonna obviously lop those off as well. Okay, I think I did enough damage on this one. I think we're down to our very last tree. Let's go take a look. This is our brown turkey fig tree taken from a cutting on the old farm. I'm gonna go ahead and link one of our pruning videos here where we were pruning down a couple of brown turkey figs that were a few years old. You'll see there, they just grow like crazy. So very, very aggressive tree. We already have our scaffolding branches here. I've got a lot of basically water sprouts coming out of the ground or suckers. We'll be keeping all those for propagation, but I need to get back down to my scaffold branches, get my center open back up again, and make sure that I've got some outward growth so it's easy to get in and harvest. So again, establishing scaffolding here, but I do have a harvesting notch. This is the north side of the tree. So I leave a gap here that I'm easily able to get into the middle of the tree and do harvesting. Heavy fruit set on this tree, so I wanna make sure I can get in here. Now, because we're dealing with a 2-year-old tree, I have some options here when it comes to the primary scaffolding. We had this branch chosen last year because we had to, but it's very low to the ground. You can probably see it has some branches that are actually touching the ground, and I do want to bring the height of this up slightly. I have a good branch right here that's heading the exact same direction, so all I'm going to do is keep this one here and hack this guy off. Okay, back to taking the height down. You can see I took that off there. Same thing with this cut here and this one. We want this tree getting nice and wide, heavy production, and we want to control the height, which I think is exactly what we did. All right, so I think that's all of our fig tree pruning that we need to do today, but do you know what rhymes with figs? So that's gonna wrap up our fig pruning for this season. I'll tell you what, one of the things as these trees get larger, I'm finding is very valuable is that Sawzall, and more importantly, this blade. So this is it's from Milwaukee. It's a 12-inch, 5 TPI pruning blade. And you can see, man, it just cuts right through that. Because it's nice and narrow, it's very easy for me to get into small spaces and take and lop large branches off, and I can do it very cleanly. So been very impressed with this and looking forward to using this more as these trees continue to grow. So just want to thank you guys for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you as a subscriber. We have over 170 fruit trees here on the farm, so if you're into figs, I think you'll be into a lot of the content that we have. And share this. If you know anybody that's into this kind of thing or could use some help when it comes to pruning, this is a great one for them as well. If you have any questions or comments, those go in the comment section down below. And our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down in the description. That is a free, painless way to help support the channel here. If you start with that link, it doesn't matter what you buy, you help to support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. I have the option of a perfectly faced south scaffold.
North.
Now, north. Put a muffler on your car, goodness gracious. So all that material down there will still produce Blackjack Black.